The police cruiser hadn't even turned off its engine before Marla Yates, HOA president and professional menace, was shrieking across her azalea hedge. "That man is trespassing." Her voice carried across the entire cul-de-sac like a foghorn of entitlement. The officer calmly approached me as I unloaded boxes of vinyl records and cast iron pans from my U-Haul. "Sir, we got a report of unauthorized occupancy," he said with the weary tone of someone who'd dealt with Marla before. I set down a box labeled tax documents and spite, straightened my back, and smiled. "I'm just moving into my house." "Well, technically, it's her house now." Marla's face went through several shades of confusion before settling on indignant red. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. "Yeah," I said, popping open another box. "You're 3 months behind on rent. We need to talk about that. My name is Gavin Croft, and I'm the kind of guy who reads zoning ordinances for fun. After a lucrative career in commercial real estate arbitration, I retired at 41 to the quiet, supposedly boring subdivision of Cypress Oak Village, a place best described as cul-de-sac purgatory with manicured lawns and passive-aggressive neighborly warfare. The house I bought was a 3-bedroom charmer, previously owned by a guy who fled to Belize after accidentally starting a cryptocurrency cult. But here's the twist that nobody in this neighborhood knew yet. I didn't just buy one house. I bought the whole cul-de-sac. 6 properties in total. All occupied. 5 regular renters who paid their rent on time and kept to themselves, and one very smug HOA president named Marla Yates, who had been living rent-controlled thanks to a 20-year-old loophole with the previous owner. When I acquired the mortgage through a series of shell companies and investment trusts, I quietly let her special arrangement lapse. The foreclosure had gone through 6 weeks ago. She had no idea that I was her new landlord, or that her kingdom of petty rules was about to crumble. The moment Marla spotted me moving in, she sprang into action like a bureaucratic spider sensing prey in her web. She called the HOA emergency line, which just rang to her own cell phone since she was the only active board member. Within minutes, she'd written up a citation for unregistered U-Haul fatigue, whatever that meant, and slapped a hot pink violation notice on my moving van that said unapproved welcome matte font in Comic Sans, which felt like adding insult to injury. Then came the flyers, which she personally distributed to every mailbox on the street. Warning. Possible squatter alert on Alderberry Court. White male, early 40s, smug aura. May attempt to quote-unquote landlord. Call Marla immediately at 555-0134. She even tried to have my car towed, claiming it was parked with an aggressive stance that violated subsection 12B of the HOA parking guidelines. The tow truck driver took one look at my perfectly legal parking job, shook his head, and left without a word. Meanwhile, I quietly reviewed lease documents, payment histories, and Marla's extensive HOA correspondence, which included handwritten threats like "we don't negotiate with garage door color anarchists" and "your mulch is an act of suburban terrorism." 3 days into my residence, I decided it was time to make my move. I walked up to Marla's door at exactly 8 a.m., dressed in my best business casual, and served her with a formal notice to cure or quit for non-payment of rent and unauthorized structural changes. The unauthorized changes included turning her front lawn into what she called a Zen barkscape with artificial squirrels that she claimed were meditation aids. She screamed so loud it triggered 3 different Nest cameras across the street and set off a car alarm 2 houses down. "This is illegal," she shrieked, waving the notice like it might burst into flames if she shook it hard enough. "You can't evict me. I'm the HOA president. I've lived here for 15 years. I calmly explained that her previous sweetheart deal with the former owner became null and void when the property transferred to me through the foreclosure process. She owed me 3 months of back rent at market rate, which came to $8,400, plus late fees. Her response was to file a restraining order. Except in her fury and confusion, she accidentally filed it against the HOA board, which was hilarious because she was the HOA board, operating under 4 different pseudonyms. M. Yates, Marla Y., Marlene Gates, and one she'd registered as Yatazilla for some reason. By the time the court date arrived, her legal defense was a spectacular display of delusion. She brought a PowerPoint presentation titled Sovereign Subdivision Law that cited no actual laws, a monopoly deed card she'd laminated and labeled Boardwalk, and a support affidavit signed by her cat, Chairman Meow, with an actual paw print in ink. The judge, who looked like he was questioning every life choice that led him to this moment, could barely hold it together. "Your Honor," Marla declared with the confidence of someone who'd watched too many legal dramas, "I invoke the ancient right of first dibs, established in the case of Finders versus Keepers, 1970 never." She then pulled out a 3-ring binder she'd labeled Constitutional Rights of HOA Presidents and began reading what she claimed was Article 7 of the Homeowners Magna Carta, which was just recipes for casseroles she'd copied from a 1980s cookbook. The judge actually had to turn away to compose himself before addressing her. "Miss Yates," he said slowly, like he was explaining something to a child, "you cannot cite the Great British Bake Off as legal precedent. And no, your 15-year residency does not grant you diplomatic immunity from eviction. Furthermore, your claim that HOA presidents are protected under maritime law because driveways are technically boat launches is not just wrong, it's remarkably creative in its wrongness." The courtroom erupted in muffled laughter from the gallery, which was packed with neighbors who'd suffered under her regime. Someone whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "She once fined me for having thoughts about the wrong shade of white paint." The judge had to bang his gavel 3 times to restore order. He ruled against Marla on all counts. My ownership was confirmed, the eviction process was officially greenlit, and Marla was fined $500 for filing fraudulent HOA citations against me, plus an additional $300 for contempt after she tried to citizens arrest the court reporter for typing too aggressively. But I wasn't done with my masterpiece of suburban justice. I showed up at the next HOA meeting, which was just Marla sitting in her backyard on a folding chair she'd designated as the official HOA throne, wearing a clip-on microphone connected to nothing. I brought with me a notarized motion to dissolve the HOA via majority vote. The other 5 homeowners on our street, whom I'd been secretly meeting with over beer and promises of freedom from mailbox height restrictions, all voted in favor. It was 5-1, with Marla being the only dissenting vote. "You can't do this," she wailed, standing up so fast her throne chair collapsed behind her. "I've dedicated my life to maintaining the aesthetic integrity of this neighborhood. Do you know what will happen without standardized grass height regulations? It'll be chaos. Anarchy. People might paint their doors colors that aren't beige." I handed her the official dissolution paperwork, which I'd had drafted by my attorney who specialized in HOA law and, coincidentally, had been sued by Marla 3 times for his own property violations in a different neighborhood. Marla was out. Legally, emotionally, and spiritually defeated. The look on her face was like watching someone realize Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and her authority had all been illusions at the same moment. I gave her 2 weeks to vacate the property, which was generous considering the circumstances. Her retaliation during those 2 weeks was both pathetic and oddly creative. She mailed passive-aggressive notes written on leaves that she'd taped to my windows with messages like "Enjoy your mildew," "Tyrant," and "Your property values will plummet without my guidance." On moving day, she orchestrated what she called a protest parade, which consisted of 3 Roombas she'd decorated with tiny HOA flags taped to them. They circled her driveway in a sad mechanical dance of defiance while she stood in her doorway with a megaphone, reciting what she called the HOA Bill of Rights, which she'd apparently written herself that morning. As her grand finale approached, I simply walked over to my phone, changed the Wi-Fi password that her smart Roombas were connected to, and watched as all 3 rolled straight into the gutter. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Without the HOA to hide behind, Marla's years of petty tyranny caught up with her. The city fined her $2,000 for operating an unregistered HOA that had been collecting dues without proper documentation. 3 neighbors filed small claims suits against her for illegally fined violations over the years, totaling another $6,000. Her attempt to claim squatters' rights was dismissed with prejudice, meaning she couldn't refile, and she was ordered to pay my legal fees of $4,500. But the real justice came when the district attorney's office pressed charges for embezzlement. The evidence was overwhelming: every receipt, every fraudulent transfer, every fake invoice from her cousin's company that only ever seemed to work on one property. The prosecutor, who happened to live in an HOA-controlled neighborhood himself and seemed to take personal satisfaction in the case, pushed for the maximum penalties. The final blow came when she was permanently banned from forming or participating in any HOA in the county after a judge reviewed her history of harassment. Then came the criminal verdict. Guilty on all counts of embezzlement. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison and ordered full restitution of the stolen $18,000 plus penalties. As the bailiff moved to take her into custody, Marla's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, her hands shaking as the handcuffs clicked shut, no sound coming out for the first time in her HOA career.